So let's go to the DynamoDB console, and I'm going to be in North Virginia. And the reason is because there's a few features that are not available in other regions. So I'll keep North Virginia as my region. So as we can see, DynamoDB is advertised as a NoSQL database, and we'll get slow latency, so low latency, and it's a great fit for many type of applications. So let's go and create a table. Now, when we create a DynamoDB table, we have to specify a table name. So let's talk about users. Let's create a users table. And so as you can see, the first thing you have to do is to create a table. We don't have to create a database. The database is already there. You don't even need to provision it. It's managed by AWS. So we can go straight into managing tables. Now for our users, we need to define a partition key. And so I can use user ID. And by the way, you're very free about how you want to name your columns. I use underscores, but you're free to do whatever you want. And user ID for me is going to be a string, but we could have it as a binary or a number. Now, we're not going to add a sort key just yet. We're going to start simple. This is a users table, and user ID is going to be unique. And within that users table, we're going to share information about our users. Now, I'm not going to use the default settings as well. I want to go and show you the options. There is a concept of secondary indexes, but we'll see this in the future lecture. And then there's provision capacity and auto-scaling. We'll see this in depth in a future lecture, but what I want you to do right now is to untick read and write capacity. We don't want to have auto-scaling on those. And we're just going to have 2 read units and 2 write units, so 2 and 2. This gives you straight an estimated cost of how much it costs to run that table per month. And for me, it will cost $1.17. Now, don't worry. This is within your free tier. You can get 10 read capacity units and 10 write capacity units total. So 2 and 2 is enough to get started and to be within the free tier. Now we are able to encrypt the data at rest, as you could expect, but we're not going to do this for now. Let's click on create. And now our table is being created. So we have to wait maybe half a second. And now our table has been created. So this table gets a lot of different configuration tabs and whatever. And on top of it, each tab has a lot of different information. So let's look at the overview tab. We can see that our table was created. The primary partition key has been defined, and there is no sort key for now. We can see all the stuff we've provisioned, including the read capacity unit and the write capacity units, 2 and 2. And we can get an Amazon resource name that uniquely identifies this table. Okay, that sounds good. Now, if you go to items, this is where stuff gets more interesting. So here we are able to add data to our table. And so as we've seen from before, an item consists of 1 or more attributes. So let's have a look and try to write an item. So we're going to create an item, and for user ID, I will just put something random. Okay, this is a user ID. And here I'm able to append a string, for example, and have the field I want. So for example, first name, and I want the first name to be equal to Stéphane. And I will append a string, last name, Marek. Excellent. So this is me. I have my user ID, is something random, and the first name is Stéphane, the last name is Marek. That sounds about right. I have defined a type for all of this data, so string, string, and string, and click on save. And as you can see, my data has been written to my table, user ID, first name, and last name. Pretty easy, right? Now let's go and create a second item. I'll have another user ID, so just something random. And then we're going to append a first name. And it's going to be Kelly. And then I'm going to append an age. So I'll have a number, and I'll call this age. And I'll say 41. Okay, click on save. So something very interesting that happened right here is that I was able to create this Kelly 41 age user ID, and it didn't have a last name and it had an age. And similarly, my little row right here does have a last name and doesn't have an age. So in DynamoDB, it is completely fine for any field to be null. Actually, you cannot enforce any field to be not null, except for user ID and sort for the partition key and the sort key. So all these fields can be null, and they can be independent of one another. So this is a big difference with versus SQL databases, which allows you to say this field is not null and whatever. So here we have a first name, no last name, and age, and for me we have first name and last name. And so we're able to add data. Now we can quickly explore this, but you're able to duplicate, edit data, delete data, export to CSV, and so on. We can go to metrics and view some metrics information about our table. Alarms, if we wanted to get auto scaling. The capacity will have a deeper look in the future. Indexes as well. Global tables is a feature that we'll talk about in the advanced section. Backups, if we don't want to back up your table. Triggers, if you wanted to have a stream. Access control, if you wanted to basically provide a Facebook login, Google login, or login with Amazon to get direct access to your table. And tags, if you wanted to add tag to your table. Overall, the most important one is going to be items for now. Now let's create a second table, and I will call it user posts. And so this is going to contain articles posted by my user. So the partition key is user ID, because I definitely want to understand which of my user posted something. And as a sort key, maybe I'll have a post timestamp. And so, yes, I want to know all my users' posts, but I'd love for them to be ordered, sorted by the post timestamp. So post TS. That sounds about right. I will not use the default setting. I will remove auto scaling. And again, I'll have 2 and 2 as a read and write capacity units. Click on create. And so now this table is going to be a little bit different because we have a primary partition key and a primary sort key. So now we're able to add multiple user ID and have the post timestamp to be distinct. So let's have a quick play with it. We can go and create an item. And so for the user ID, again, just choose whatever you want. The post timestamp, you need to enter a date, so 2018, and then the month, and then the day, and then a timestamp. So we'll say 12/30/40Z, click on save. And so here we have our posts. And by the way, we can add a bit of content. So we'll say in append here, and I will say the content of the article is going to be, or the post is going to be hello world. First post, click on save. And now we have our first post by our user, and we can create another item. I'll use the same user ID, and now I'll use a different timestamp. So I'll just have, now we're in October, so I'll just have this date, and then for time, I'll just say 03/04/05Z. And then in terms of the content, I will say content is awesome, new post, second ever. Okay, so this is just an article that I wrote, and I click on save. And so now we can see that our user ID right here is the same for both these rows, but because our post timestamp is different, this is our sort key, then we're basically fine because the combination of user ID and post timestamp is unique. And the idea is that now our posts are going to be sorted by post timestamp within a particular user ID. And so that's the whole power of DynamoDB here. So it's just to get started, but here we saw basically how to create tables, how to provision them, how to have either primary key and primary and sort key. And so that's it for the basics. Let's go in the next lecture to talk about throughputs.